Good evening and welcome to another edition of the Post Route. First, let me say Happy New Year to everyone. I hope everyone has brought the new year in well, and I hope that you will make the best of 2024 because already it looks like it's going to be a fantastic year. So, Happy New Year's to everyone from the staff, from the management of Quarterfive Back Awards and the Post Route. We're so happy to have you here tonight with us. I'm your host, W. Earl Kitchings. And 2024, we're on the precipice of identifying who will be the next national champion for college football at the D1 level. And of course, other championships have already been decided. So it's going to be fantastic to see how the rest of the year comes out. As you know, they're getting ready for the Super Bowl, and the NFL playoffs are getting ready to start. And it's ironic. Some great things are happening as you look at the way the NFL is laying out this 2024 part of the season as they get ready for the playoffs. Ironically, three black coaches are leading their teams to the playoffs, and I don't know if that's ever happened before. So kudos to those gentlemen who are leading their teams into these playoffs. But tonight, we're getting ready to start off this part of the 2023-2024 season of our show. And what we want to do, if for those of you who are joining us for the first time, our show is dedicated to the mission of preserving the legacies of black quarterbacks. And what we want to do and what is our job and our mission is to make sure with this program that we get a chance to talk to the guys who legacies and histories, a lot of these guys who are now playing currently in the pros and in college, they're standing on their shoulders. And what we want to do here at Quarterfive Back in the Post Route is make sure that their legacies and their histories are never, ever, ever forgotten, because many of them did some phenomenal things during their time. And for those you don't know of, this is why this show has been created. For those you do know of, we're going to give you a little bit more of a background into who they are. And as I've told many of them, everybody's got a story. And if you got a great story, we want to hear about it right here on the Post Route, because nothing makes for good conversation other than a good story, some good tidbits, some good nuggets about things that no one really is totally aware of. But to hear them come from the guy who made it happen, or to talk about their teammates, or to talk about their coaches, talk about the games, the experiences, this is why we have this show. So here at the Post Route, what we want to do every Monday night here at 7 o'clock, we want to bring you this show and bring you some of the most outstanding talent this country has ever seen right here on this show. So with that being said, we're getting ready for tonight's show. And joining me for tonight's show is a gentleman who I met some years back. He's an outstanding football player. He's a product of Jacksonville, Florida, played at Andrew Jackson High School, set some records there, and then took his talents about 90 miles south to Daytona Beach, Florida, where he found his natural niche of being the all-time passing quarterback at Bethune-Cookman University. Over 7,700 passing yards in his four-year career, a two-time All-MEAC. He led his 1984 team to the MEAC championship, and he stands at the top of the Cookman record book, and he is fourth all time on the MEAC, the Mid-Eastern Athletic Conference passing record, and he accomplished this over 40 years ago. And that record continues to hold up and stand. And you know, a lot of times we talk about, well, records are meant to be broken. Yes, that's very true. But sometimes time will delay when that record will be broken, if ever. And I think about the fact that the Miami Dolphins are the only team to ever go a full season undefeated. That record has been very close to being broken, has yet to fall yet. So tonight, as we talk to our guests, I hope that we get some good nuggets, because He's a very interesting guy. I just love him to death because of who he is, and we've always had a great conversation, always had a great relationship, and that's been one of the things that I've always been proud of. And as mild and low-key as he might seem, man, he's got a lot of fire in his belly when it came time to playing football. So joining me tonight is my guest from Bethune-Cookman University, the one, the only, the great Bernard Hawk. Hey, Hawk, how you doing tonight? Welcome to the Post Route.
Oh, thanks, Errol. I'm doing very well.
Well, we talk about, in the intro, we talk about the fact that you played football at Jackson High School. So let's talk a little bit about what that experience was like and your coach and how that transitioned you to going to Bethune-Cookman, because not everybody is a passing quarterback when they leave high school. Guys can throw the ball, but maybe they don't throw it for as many yards as some of these guys in this day and time. We talk about quarterbacks at the high school level now throwing for 3,000-4,000 yards. A young man coming out of Willis, Texas, he threw for 4,800 yards this past year and 58 touchdowns. So talk a little bit about playing at Jackson High School in Jacksonville, Florida, and what that experience was like for you back when you played there.
Well, first, as most of us former athletes and quarterbacks have done, you start out on the JV level. And believe it or not, Earl, we were a defeated team at Jackson during my 10th grade year. And I couldn't get a grasp of that because of the fact that I had came from a winning program during the Pop Warner years at North Jacks. And, getting over to Andrew Jackson and, going out for JV. And I think at the 5th game, we were 0-5. So fortunately, we only had 7 games. So, the next 2 was quite painful. But, I was almost about to have a disinterest for football at that time. But thankfully, we had a varsity team that knew the talents that had been laid at the JV level and wanted to bring some guys up. Now I took time off, so I got back in the books, got back in school, and concentrate on studies. So when there was a transition from the head coaches, Seth McCullough came over, and he had a couple of us try out. Now, mind you, I had 2 guys that were already ahead of me. One named Ron Walters, and then the late David Payton. Now, Ron did come. Ron came with me from North Jacks through that program, and David was one of those guys that came up through the Cougar Park rings. And technically, Cougar Park was a feeder to Andrew Jackson by all means. Well, take a step back. You left Cougar Park, went to Kirby Smith, then you went to Andrew Jackson. So, fast forward, I'm in 11th grade. I got a junior. I got 2 seniors in front of me. That's Ron Walters and David Payton. We playing against your alma mater, Reigns. And I'll be honest with you, Earl, that was a brutal game for me. You're talking about, being tossed around, being hit from all different sides. But, the way it started was Ron was a short guy. He was about 5'8", 5'9". Ron started out in the first quarter. That didn't work. David started out in the second quarter. He was about my height, at 6'1", what have you. David just didn't have the mechanics, to keep up with the Reigns defense. So here it is. I'm thrown in the line of fire in the third quarter and the fourth. Fortunately, I did get a touchdown against Reigns, and that's my bragging rights, still today. Because the game ended up being 37-7. Of course, our bands were the talk of the town back then. We had bands that they threw penalties on our bands, either for the time frame that they included on the field or the content of the display of who was dancing. So that's how I got my start. And the rest is history. Of course, going into my senior year, I had the job, and there's another former late Tiger, little Robert Gentile, who was up and coming, and everybody was telling him, well, no, they were telling me that Gentile's gonna move you out, and due to the fact that I had this, if you're behind me, you're gonna stay there until I'm ready, to give up the seat. And Robert found that out pretty quickly. Fortunately, he moved to the wide receiver position, and we became one of the best combo tandems in the history of Andrew Jackson football. So, unfortunately, he passed away this past summer. I miss him dearly, and so do all of us. Not only at Andrew Jackson, but around Duval County and Jacksonville in itself. Because even once I graduated, Robert, he still was one of the thriving forces at Andrew Jackson. They tried to move him back at quarterback, but he felt quite comfortable being a receiver, basically being an all-around athlete, if you want to put it in the perfect sense.
Well, Hawk, when did you realize that being a quarterback was really what you were basically cut out to do? I mean, what happened in that short span between Pop Warner and getting to Jackson showed you that, hey, I've got the ability, because I think when we're coming up, man, when I think back, everybody likes to play quarterback when we're playing touch football or tackle in the neighborhood. But, you separate yourselves when you start playing organized football, and the coaches will define who has the talent. When did you really know that you had that special talent to be a quarterback?
It was at the Pop Warner level. I had the talent, but I had to grow to learn the game and be a student of the game. And quite naturally, Earl, if for my position, you had to have the level of intelligence to not only just know your position, but know everybody else's. And the funny thing is, at the Pop Warner level, we were running the wishbone. Wow. So the passing quarterback of Bernard Hawk did not happen until, we got to Jackson. But we were running the wishbone, and I was emulating, Don Gaffney is a good friend of mine today. And, the three guys ahead in the backfield, we had three good guys. We had three little thin guys, but we ran that wishbone with precision, and we were undefeated. So, once I got over to Jackson, I had to, broaden my horizon and understand the fact that, your talent is not in that wishbone type of offense, that option type offense. You are a passing quarterback, but you have to have the intelligence to know exactly what you're doing and why you're doing it and who is doing it around you.
Okay. So you complete your time at Jackson. Now it's time for you to leave Jackson your senior year. How did you end up getting to Bethune-Cookman University, or Bethune-Cookman College at that time? But how did you end up getting down to Daytona? Because as we know, most times, not all black colleges are built on passing games. So because you had a prowess for throwing the football, how did you end up at Bethune-Cookman?
Do you want to go back to the seventh grade? Because that's where it started. The late Wallace Raspberry,
okay,
and Alfred Hayward.
Okay,
they were my PE coaches.
Okay,
and the conversation about Bethune-Cookman was talked about in our small talks. Now, mind you, yes, I'm in seventh grade, and I go through this progression of going to Kirby Smith and then Andrew Jackson, but Bethune-Cookman is still in my mind because I get over to Andrew Jackson and I meet Coach Humphrey, another Bethune-Cookman great.
James Humphrey,
yeah. He was from Daytona Beach, played, I believe, at Campbell High School, and I heard he was a phenomenal basketball player who they call Red.
That's correct. That's correct.
So, and also going back to the seventh grade, I had a seventh grade teacher, another late teacher, Miss O'Brien. She was married to the late Ezek Bryant.
Okay.
and Ezekiel was one of the trustee members at Bethune-Cookman. So fast forward, having, like you said, the FAMUs, the South Carolina States, the Tennessees, the Auburns and the Clemsons coming after me. I took my trip down to Daytona, fell in love with the beach, had a trip scheduled over to Disney World. I had never been to Disney World. We played one of my high school games. We played against New Smyrna Beach, and the entire coaching staff was there for Bethune-Cookman, except for Bobby Frazier, because he couldn't make contact with me. But the one person that basically shook my hand and pretty much welcomed me to the Bethune-Cookman family, before I even had graduated, was the late great Cy McLaren, who is, has been, in my heart, from that day up until this day now. And I took that with knowing the fact that after taking the trips up Florida, and Earl, I had to tell you, Rudy flew me up on one of those little crop dusters, Dolphin Airlines. I think I had like 12 seats.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
Stayed on Tennessee Street. I think it was a Capitol Hilton. I had Big Nate Newton and all them guys come and, greet me. And, one of the things I think was a turning point for me choosing Bethune-Cookman over Florida A&M was, I believe, the 81 season. You guys beat us 29-0. And when I was in there watching the film, I remember with Billy Coombs and Nate and all those guys, they were just, they was dogging Bethune-Cookman out, 29-0. But of course, I got the story later that the bus broke down. So I said, well, that's all fine and good. But getting back to Daytona Beach, and finally having a conversation with Bobby Frazier. He had two seniors. Well, actually, Kenny McMillan was their quarterback. Kenny had just graduated. Well, he was on the verge of graduating. He had two seniors, C.B. Collins and David Jones, that were, they were on the verge of graduating. So here it is, you're bringing me in, and I was one of those early graduates from Jackson. Early college started with me, because I was in school so early. I didn't even have a chance to tell nobody goodbye or anything. It was like, you graduated June 2nd, June 4th. I was in Bethune-Cookman, and in quarterback school.
Right.
But the program was laid out for me to start early, knowing the fact that I had to learn a system that I was accustomed to, and also, allow Coach Frazier to have confidence in a 17-year-old coming out of high school to say that we're going to build this offense around this young man, and he's going to do great things for us. So that was a confidence builder. And I had some very good teachers in David and CB. They were not envious of me because of my talent. I learned, so much from them. They were students of the game. So I just married my talent and picked their brains. And, we went out, the first year. We lost our first game in Southern here in Jacksonville, 14-10, which it was on technicality because one of my linemen, he picked up a fumble / interception because, at that time, Earl, they didn't have the replays.
Right, right.
So it wasn't undisputable that he caught the ball before it hit the ground, but back then it was whatever the ref said. That's what went.
That's right.
So, but we lost that game to Southern, and I got thrown into thrown into the line of fire at that moment. And I had two great receivers, Leon Gonzalez, from Ribault, Darryl Crane from Ribault, and most people want to know what the chemistry was, and the chemistry was Scott Park. Darryl lived right across the street from Scott Park. So when I would spend, my spring or my summers over to our aunts that lived in that area, I was at Scott Park working out with Crane and, Leon and, the Gaffneys. So I had to grow up fast. and developing with those guys that transcended into, the skills that I displayed at Bethune-Cookman as a freshman. And like I said, with the knowledge that CB and David gave me, it just pretty much allowed me to, maintain, my status as becoming, who I became after those 4 years.
Well, Hawk, when we talk about guys who play the quarterback, number one, that's the one position everybody looks at. Most times, 99% of the time, the quarterback will be the captain on the team. And then the other thing is everybody puts confidence in that person, and that person must demand not only respect, but they must demand that everybody's going to follow that person's lead. So after, the first year, everybody's probably kind of feeling you out to see how you're going to deal with things. But now, after 2 years, now you're getting ready for the next seasons of your junior and senior year, and everybody's familiar with you. So now you demand or command, I'm not demand, but command everybody's respect, and everybody believes in your talent for being this quarterback who can get the job done. So, or in your junior and senior years, talk a little bit about maybe one or two games that really, really, really stood out. I know you had a big game against Morris Brown where you threw for 491 yards, but you had several games where you threw for over 300 yards. Talk about one or two of those games and what that experience was like after those first 2 years of everybody getting comfortable with you, and then you becoming the quarterback that led Bethune to that 1984 championship, and then your senior year of just trying to finish out and try to repeat that, because those are two pivotal years, in my opinion, as a quarterback, coming in the way you did, being thrown into it and having to not really have enough time to grasp the system from the sideline. You got thrown into it right away, and it's a quick study, but obviously you were a student of the game and you learned it very well. So what about those that junior and senior year?
Well, Earl, let's back up to the sophomore year, because that's when the transition started from Dr. Bobby Frazier to Larry Little. And you gotta consider the fact that Bobby brought me in there. He recruited me. He believed in he believed in the talents that I had to lead us to the promised land. Unfortunately, no. Freshman year, we went 5-5, lost homecoming and lost the classic. And that's another story about losing that homecoming, losing the classic. So here comes the sophomore year. Bobby did extend the opportunity for me to follow him to the University of DC. In hindsight, I don't know today, of course, that wasn't the right decision for a 17-year-old to make at that time. But I did consider it because of our friendship. But when Larry came in, the first thing he did was let me know that he knew the fact that I was a quarterback of the future. He also made it known that the word was he was bringing in guys from Miami. And for me, quarterbacks. Mm-hmm. But he said that if I was going to continue on the path that I had started my freshman year, then the job was up in the air. But it was up to me to prove that to him that I'm still the leader of this ship, and I am going to guide and teach whoever that is that comes along with me or comes after me. But not by no means was I going to take a back seat, no matter who he brought in. So the first thing he did was he hired Rick Stockstill. Rick had just graduated from Florida State. He was a quarterback at Fernandina Beach, quarterback at Florida State with Wally Woodham and with Jimmy Jordan. And that was a perfect marriage. Now, here's the secret ingredients to that success for the 84 championship team and part of the 83. We had the Dolphins run game because Larry went back to Miami and got Don Shooter to give him the secret ingredients to how they were successful in winning the championship of 1972, undefeated, still today. On the other hand, Stockstill brought in Florida State's offense. So I was running Bobby Bowen's offense. The Zebras, the Exxons, the Cadillacs, and the Chevys. I was, I loved it. And we made success with that. And that pretty much took us throughout the 84 season, going 7-3, our 3 setbacks. You mentioned about one of the highlights of the seasons for me as far as the passing game was concerned. It was right here in Jacksonville, Earl. I went down to defeat against my good friend Tracy Hammer, Georgia Southern. We ended up losing 43-33. Of course, one of the records is still mine, is the over 500 yards passing. And you alluded about the Morris Brown game, which was another 400-yard passing game, but also 5 touchdowns in addition. So I give credit to the offense that was put together by Larry Little and Rick Stockstill to allow us to become champions of the Bethune-Cookman and also in the MEAC for the first time in the school's history. And all the other athletes just come along as the chips fall. Being 2-time All MEAC and Black College Player of the Year and all that good stuff. So those things came along with the success of how we ran the offense. And like I said, I have to go back to Larry putting together, a line that basically, if I possibly could have taken that line with me to Canada, I would probably be retiring at age 40, in the CFL. But those are a great group of guys. I still respect them. They respect me. And we, like I said, we're coming up on our 40th anniversary this homecoming this year, 2024.
Well, congratulations on that particular season. You guys did a phenomenal job. It's nothing like winning the championship, and it's nothing like being given the green light, if you would, to be a passing quarterback in a passing scheme, because I don't think any quarterback who gets up under the center in the shotgun is upset when the coach gives them the green light to just throw the ball at will, sling it around, man. I don't care, sling it around. So I'm sure that when you got that green light or kept that green light coming from between Coach Frazier and Coach Little, it had to please you that he didn't change anything, but he kept that same type of offensive mindset to allow you to be the productive quarterback and the all-time passer that you became at Bethune-Cookman, because I'm sure in quarterbacks' minds, that's what they love to do. They love to sling the ball. If they didn't have to run the ball, I would say if you guys didn't have to, if you didn't have to, you would throw it on every down.
Right. And that was something that was the adjustment that we had to make, because it was 70-30 for us in the pass run ratio. And of course, Little being an offensive lineman, and we had some great running backs. We had James Graham from Fort Lauderdale, King Green from Miami. So we had to give them due diligence, and break it down from 70-30 to 60-40. And that basically, that was a secret sauce, to, like I said, it allowed us to become champions of, Bethune-Cookman and the MEAC for the first time in school's history.
Well, Hawk, I know when we were growing up playing in the neighborhood and things like that, man, the favorite play that everybody wanted to run or throw was throwing what we call the bomb, and I know a lot of times these teams come out the first play of the game, they want to throw the long deep pass. Was that something you enjoyed doing first play of any game, to go for that long deep pass when you had the kind of receivers who could get open?
Well, that was that was a secret weapon, because first I had to analyze what I had. And once teams felt like what they were going to do was they were going to shut down our passing game. And even if that meant rushing 3 and dropping 8, I had to find those lanes. So it was a challenge, but it came with patience and knowing your personnel, knowing the fact that I only got 3 guys rushing, so I do have a little bit more time. I had 2 linemen that possibly they could have went out for a pass if they wanted to. So yeah, I think I was defined by the bomb, by the deep pass, because Leon and I, we we perfected it, and it came from the preset limit, I would say, from Scott Park. Because like I said, those guys were, you had the entire Gaffney family, as talented as they are.
Mm-hmm.
And then you had Terry, LeCount, he was out there. So I pretty much had a really, really good base foundation to continue to be, one of the premier quarterbacks that came out of Bethune-Cookman from Jacksonville. Because I tell you, one of my goals that I came short of was to win a national championship, because Al did it at FAMU. And, still today, here it is, 40 something years later, they're the only national champions of Black college football in 1AA. Well, it's 1AA, still 1AA to me.
Right. I get that.
And I say, and like I said, Al and I, we talk text about possibly every other day, every other, something of that nature. And even when we get into our FAMU Bethune-Cookman wars, Al has one up on me because he has that national championship ring. I have the MEAC championship. I have the Florida Classic championship, but I did not get the Black College National Championship. So I always give Al his props and his due. I give him his flowers each and every time we talk about the fact that he is he's my legend, so to speak. So, but he's another guy that came from, we consider, I guess Scott Park was quarterback U. So no doubt. Yeah, and me being from out east, they didn't know that, but I they welcomed me into the fold.
Okay. Well, Hawk, hang tight real quick. I'm gonna take this 1 minute commercial break, and we're gonna come back. Tonight we're talking with the legend Bernard Hawk, Bethune-Cookman University, the all-time passer at Bethune-Cookman for the Wildcats, and we're gonna come back after this 1 minute break and talk a little bit more about Bernard Hawk and quarterbacking and Wildcat football here on the Post Route. Stay with us. So if you're looking for the best in collegiate gear, apparel, anything that you want to show off your particular alma mater, you want to just brag a little bit more about what school you came from, let me tell you where you need to go. Go online and look up the AnthonyLawrenceCollection.com. AnthonyLawrenceCollection.com provides some of the best gear that you could ever want to have to wear in your closet. If that's something you enjoy doing, showing off your pride of your school, check out the Anthony Lawrence Collection. Go to their website. They're based out of Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and they are constantly coming up with new and fresh gear for all the HBCU alums who want to show off, and for the fans who want to support the schools that they feel an allegiance to. That's the Anthony Lawrence Collection for the next thing that you're looking for when you're looking for the right gear for your alma mater. And hey, if you want to learn more about quarterbacks like my guest tonight, Bernard Hawk, go to the website quarterphiback.com. That's quarterphiback.com, and order a copy of my book. You see them behind me, The Forgotten QBs. You can read about Bernard Hawk and many, many other quarterbacks between 1903 and 1990, Black quarterbacks who made their legacies and made history in the colleges that they played for, both at the major colleges and for HBCUs. That book is filled with a lot of historical facts, articles, data, statistics, you name it, it's in there. And I've been asked, am I going to do a volume 2? Well, I got to do a volume 2 now that everybody's asking. But get your copy of The Forgotten QBs, written by me, W. Earl Kitchings, so that you can know more about not only my guest, Bernard Hawk, but the hundreds of other quarterbacks who've played this game and have become legends on the gridiron. That's The Forgotten Quarterbacks, The Forgotten QBs. Go online, quarterphiback.com, and get your copy. Joining me once again is my guest tonight, Mr. Bernard Hawk, the all-time leader in passing at Bethune-Cookman University. Hey, Bernard, having worked at Bethune-Cookman for 5 years, I got a chance to be a part of that program's history and to see from the inside out the legacy, the tradition, the pride. And I will have to say that my view of Bethune-Cookman University in my short time there gave me a lot of insight into the pride of what you guys experienced for the time you were there. And man, let me tell you, I have much respect for all you guys who wore that maroon and gold, because understanding that you don't have a lot to work with, but then if you don't see it, you could not tell that you guys didn't have a lot to work with, because you always played at a much higher level. You always displayed a lot of respect, a lot of talent. You were always in a fight. If you got in a fight with the Wildcats, it's going to be a fight. So seeing that from the inside, man, it said a lot to me. But I got to Bethune-Cookman when the next outstanding quarterback at Bethune-Cookman came, and he is number 2 on the all-time passing list at Bethune-Cookman, and he's in the top 15 in the MEAC passing. And that was a guy who I believe, you had something to do with his grooming and bringing him along, and that was Jermaine J.D. Hall. Speak a little bit about J.D.
Well, first, like I said, as we know, J.D. did pass at a young age at 35, and his passing basically encompassed what he was doing. He was coaching, and he was a student of the game. He was a player's coach, and he was a coach's player. So, and knowing about JD in high school in 1989, I found out, he played for the late Corky Rogers over at Lee High School, which is now Riverside. Because I did keep up with, the quarterbacks that came after me. And despite, JD having a 5 or 6 year difference, his name just kept coming up, JD Hall, JD Hall. I don't know the transition of how he got to Bethune-Cookman, but I just know that once he got there, his name just kept coming up. Finally, as you mentioned, Earl, during the year that you were there, the 1991 season, unfortunately, there was a transition of Little going out and another gentleman coming in. I was asked by the administration if I would come back, because I was at my retirement stage with the Tampa Bay Storm in Tampa, and I felt like it was a good prime time opportunity for me to come back, mentor someone that I had known about for years. Of course, the hype was JD was closing in on my records, which, first of all, I felt like, well, this is a young man that I need to get to know and understand, and where his mindset is as far as the complete total quarterback athlete. Believe it or not, JD and I spent a whole lot of time together that we really didn't know that we spent, because he had I forgot what type of car he had. He had this little, it was a little dune buggy, I believe it was, and we get in there with the dune buggy, and we just ride around Daytona, ride to the beach and back, and just talk about football, talk about life in general, not about the fact that he's closing in on my records. Which, when the subject did come up, it was not a selfish act for me to say, Jay, I would love for you to break or seek out to accomplish what I have achieved there at Bethune-Cookman. Because who knows? We don't know when the next, Bernard Hall or J.D. Hall is going to come along. Unfortunately, J.D. did not meet all of his goals, but 2 of the goals that I did mention to him, I told him, look, I said, if you are going to be the premier quarterback of Bethune-Cookman and the history and the legacy, you got to win homecoming. You got to win the classic. I don't care what else game you win or lose. Do not lose homecoming, and do not lose the classic, especially your senior year. Earl, I don't know if you remember the homecoming game, but he set it out in homecoming. I want to say it was against Morris Brown, because I believe it was a game that he tied my record to 491, if my recollection is correct. Then he went down to the Florida Classic, and basically he didn't need to be coached. He had already been prepped. He knew that this was his last season. He knew that the fact that he could not come back to Jacksonville, which I told him, you cannot come back to Jacksonville without winning against Florida A&M. I say that's just a standard of living. It's the way of life. And JD played that game like it was his last, like it was his last game, 35-21. He scored a touchdown, went over there in the end zone, threw his hooks up, and the rest is history. So unfortunately, I think the scouts did not see him as one of those quarterbacks that could rise to the level that most quarterbacks that you and I see today that have done, very, very well in the NFL and other leagues. So JD didn't waste a moment. After graduating this spring of '93, he went straight into coaching because he knew that that's exactly where his passion was. And who did he hook up with? His mentor and his father of Bethune-Cookman, Larry Little. And
North Carolina Central.
Yes. And once he got that training, Larry gave him the training. He took them training wheels off, came back to Jacksonville. I believe I was, working at a school that he wanted me to come and work with him over at Mandarin. And most people know how I am about, orange and green. Girl, I tell you, Jay and I was in the parking lot. Mandarin played Sandalwood. And Jay and I was in the parking lot, and one of the administrators saw us over there talking, and she said, "I know what's going on," but it ain't happening. But little did she know, despite Jay was like, "Oh, don't worry about these colors." He kept saying, "Don't worry about these colors." I said, "I can't do it. I will not do it. I refuse." So that was a story between Jay and I not coaching together. But we did have we had a future plan though. We had a future plan that Jay was going to go back down to Bethune-Cookman one day, and then I would follow him. And, God had, other plans. I still think today, 40 plus years later, I'm kind of torn with that because I know that probably would have been a pivotal moment for me as far as transitioning back into the game of football from a coaching standpoint of view, because I never looked at it from that angle ever again after JD passed away. Part of football coaching left me when JD passed away. Now on the flip side, when you're talking about the passion to get out there and scout, the high schools and send the guys not only to Bethune-Cookman but to Florida A&M and any of our HBCUs. That's part of my passion there, and so I'll continue to do that in my sleep.
Okay. So real quick, Hawk, in looking at quarterbacks, what are a couple of things that you really look for a top-notch quarterback to have when you're watching them perform in the game? What are you really zoning in on?
I'm zoning in on his mechanics. I'm zoning in on what type of peripheral vision he has scanning the field. Of course, the arm strength is very important. But if you have the mechanics and you're a student of the game, your reading is paramount. Because like I said, I've had to go up against 8 DBs. They probably wasn't DBs back there, but they had no business back there, but they was back there, and their objective was to shut down the passing game. So you have to be very methodical. You have to be very strategic in your opponent and how you're going to defeat them based upon your skill set, your mindset, and what you have to work with as far as your offensive line and your receiver weapons. So in this day and time, we look at the quarterbacks that are playing on the high level, either on the collegiate level or the NFL. They have those things. There was a guy, Shedeur Sanders, that a lot of people have been telling me, you got to watch this guy. You got to watch this guy. What do you think about him? Well, I haven't sat down at my dinner table and watched him to play while I'm doing my critiquing. And if he has all the things that everybody is gloating about, then I may give him his props. I had to do that with Tom Brady. Out of all the hype that everybody talked about Tom Brady, I wasn't impressed until I really sat down and saw from top to bottom how much of a complete quarterback Tom Brady is, and how well he picked apart defenses. That was just, it was tremendous. So those are the things, Earl.
So who in talking about quarterbacks, who was your all-time favorite quarterback at any level? Who was your favorite quarterback?
Well, I'm a Rams fan, and
Okay.
people don't realize I've been a Rams fan since 1973. So you
Okay.
got to look at the fact I was in the third grade watching the Rams, and James Harris was the quarterback. So it started with James, Vince Evans, and then of course Doug. And of course, I had to come, I had to come back home locally and look at the fact that you had Don, you had Al, and you had Terry. Those were the people that groomed me, in that Scott Park arena. But yeah, on the national level, yeah, it was James Harris, Vince Evans, and Doug Williams.
What stood out about James Harris? Because James Harris came on the scene in the late '60s. He started with the Buffalo Bills, ended up with the LA Rams, and was ever so close to getting the Rams to the Super Bowl. What stood out about James Harris? Because I mean, he was a phenomenal guy, and he did not get his props like he should have, because I think he was ahead of his time.
He persevered, and he persevered under the circumstances and the situations that was dealt to him, either directly or indirectly. He kept a level head. He kept his composure. He stayed poised, and he played. He kept his A game. And I want to say that he led them to the NFC Championship in '79, and that pretty much, kept his name alive. But then there was some that just felt like, yeah, I know he did this, but we still need that somebody that doesn't look exactly like him to lead us to the promised land. So I'm glad that he and Doug persevered the way that they did. And as you know, today, they're part of an organization that, they're trying to bring me into the fold, with the, with the Black College Football Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, my friend, I know that your time is coming. It's just a matter of time. They're doing a phenomenal job with that organization and bringing all these gentlemen up. This year's class would include a great legend of Black college football by the name of Joe 747 Adams, who played at Tennessee State. He's coming in the class of 2024. So I know your time will come. It's just a matter of time, and sometimes people aren't patient enough to just wait, because there are a lot of guys out there deserving, and you can't put 30 of them in at one time, but everybody's time will come, and believe me, Hawk, I know your time will come, because you put in the work, you put in the effort, you did what you're supposed to do, man, and you set records. So I know in God's time, in all due time, you will get your place to sit at that table with all those other phenomenal Black college football players who are now in the Black College Football Hall of Fame. So my friend, just be patient, because it will happen.
Well, I appreciate that, Earl. You've always been one of my biggest, people on the sideline. You probably waving an orange and green flag, but didn't know, you was rooting for Bernard Hawk. So I give you your props, brother.
Well, for a guy who have graduated from Florida A&M and to work at Bethune-Cookman, man, let me tell you, man, when I got to Bethune-Cookman, I got so much grief my first year. But after that first year, everything kind of settled down, and they understood that I was a very real person. It wasn't about my school. It was about where I was working and trying to make the best for the men and women of that athletic program and the students at the college to make it better for them, because that's what it was all about. So I took the shots, man, but I took it and laughed at it, because, you talked about JD's senior year. Well, I remember that game so well, because, not only did he score a touchdown, but Kelvin Daniels scored 3 in that game, and That was just a phenomenal game. So I'll never forget that game. But I relish my time at Bethune-Cookman, and I relish guys like yourself and J.D. Hall, the late J.D. Hall, and a lot of other young men and young ladies who helped make my career there as a sports information director what it was.
Well, I guess I have to speak on behalf of the entire Wildcat family. We appreciate it, the small time that you spent there, and it was well spent. And I'm glad that you and I, developed the friendship that we did at that time, and it still continues today. So yeah. I'm forever so grateful.
Well, Hawk, I do appreciate you coming on and joining us tonight, man. It was a great time talking to you. I know there's a lot more we could talk about, but we're going to have to get out of here, man. And again, thank you so very much for taking the time to come on and share a little bit about Bernard Hawk and his time at Bethune-Cookman and his time leading into that and his experiences, man, because you are truly one of the great quarterbacks to ever play in the MEAC. And I'm glad that I was placed where I was so that friendships and relationships could be built, man. So thank you again for joining us. And, anything I can ever do for you, please don't hesitate to let me know.
Okay. Thank you so much too, Earl.
All right. That was the great Bernard Hawk joining us tonight, the all-time leading passer at Bethune-Cookman University, 7,737 yards, still number one after 40 years, still on the top, followed by another great quarterback from Jacksonville, the late, great J.D. Hall. We're going to take this quick time out before we get ready to close our show out tonight. We're again thankful for having Bernard on tonight. We are so grateful that all the guys who come on to be on the post route give us the opportunity to have a story, share, laugh, talk about some things they did. But once again, we want to say that if you're interested in finding out more about quarterbacks like Bernard Hawk and J.D. Hall and many of the other great quarterbacks who played football at HBCUs and the great quarterbacks who put down legends and history at power colleges, go to our website at quarter5back.com and get a copy of my book, The Forgotten QBs, the little-known history, historical facts, and statistics about quarterbacks who played between 1903 and 1990. I had to cut it off at that time because it was just a point of making sure that I got everybody that I could who were outstanding quarterbacks in that time. But it's a lot of information in that book. So go to our website. The book only costs $35. Go to quarter5back.com, click on the icon for the book, and as soon as your order comes in, we'll ship it out to you right away. And then if you're looking for apparel to dress down or dress up for your next football, basketball, whatever college event you're going to for your alma mater, check out the folks out there at the Anthony Lawrence Collection. They are a great group of people who are putting together phenomenal apparel and gear for all the HBCUs across this country. So if you're looking for it, go to AnthonyLawrenceCollection.com. Go to their website, click on their gallery. I'm sure if you went to HBCU, they've got some gear for you. The Anthony Lawrence Collection. Well, as we get ready to wind down tonight, we want you to know that we are very close to finishing up our voting for this year's 2023 BIP Memorial Trophy winners. We gave you the quarterbacks from the collegiate era. We've got a couple of guys from our high school level, but that high school level, let me tell you, the top guy right now is a guy by the name of Derek D.J. Lagway. He is the National Player of the Year. He is the Gatorade Player of the Year. He is Mr. Texas Football, 4,800 plus yards, 58 touchdowns. He is a phenomenon. At about 6'3", he can throw it and he can run. And if you want to see him, you won't have to wait long because he is headed to the University of Florida to try to get the Gators back on track in 2024. So we will be coming up with that final balloting for the BIP Memorial Trophy, the only trophy designated for the top quarterback at an HBCU and the top Black quarterback at the high school level across America. We're also putting together our honors. We're going to do a honors selection where we identify 4 different levels of quarterbacks who have done their time this past year. So we'll have one level called the honorable mention, and that will be for guys who earn the roster position, black quarterbacks who earn the roster position on their college football team. We will give out the distinguished honors for anybody who played in a minimum of 3 games and threw for over 500 yards. Then we will have our ring of honor, and that goes for guys who played in 7+ games and threw for over 1,000 yards. And then for our professional quarterbacks, we will have our triumph honor for those guys who play at the pro level. So we got one great award for 2 quarterbacks, and then we've got all these honors, because what those honors will do will put these guys in our fraternity. That's what we call Quarterfied Back. We call it our fraternity of black quarterbacks. Never before has something like this ever been done, and we need all the support we can get. We want you to talk about it, tell people about it, because these guys are doing phenomenal jobs at the places where they are. And part of the reason that we do this is because we know that the quarterbacks at the HBCU level will probably never, ever see winning the Johnny Unitas Award, the Peyton Award, or the Davey O'Brien Award as a top quarterback. So we had to create our own, and we're so happy that God saved that for us to do. And we're trying to make sure that it comes at every opportunity. We want to talk about quarterfied backs and the legacies of these guys. So we're going to be coming up with that award soon. And like I said, we're going to be creating these honors so that everybody's legacy will always be around, so that the day we open, and let me tell you, one of the things we are looking to do one day here at Quarterfied Backs, we want to open up our own museum. And when we open up that museum, we will have basically plaques to indicate who quarterbacks were in our class of 2023 and going forward. So you'll see all these guys' names, from the major colleges to the FCS colleges to the Division II colleges. We're going to have them all there. If they're a black quarterback, we're going to have them on our plaques to make sure that their legacies are never, ever forgotten, because we feel that it is just that important. And if we don't look out for ourselves and we don't do this for ourselves, then it probably won't get done. So please, we will be releasing that and announcing that in the upcoming future and in this month of January. And we're hoping that before we get out of the month of January, you will know who the 2023 BIP Memorial Trophy winner for being the outstanding quarterback from an HBCU and the top black quarterback at the high school level from across the nation. We have documented over 500 high school quarterbacks this past year. Last year, we were just over 400. This year, we got about 500 quarterbacks from East Coast to West Coast, North and South, who are black quarterbacks that have made their marks either with their passing or just being able to make their teams, because it's not easy making the team and then to get in the line of fire to perform. You know, we had a lot of outstanding quarterbacks. And last year we had 16 guys to throw for over 3,000 yards. We didn't have that many throw for over 3,000 yards this year, but we had a lot of quarterbacks who threw over 2,500 yards plus, and only a few who threw for over 4,000 yards. But 7 of the top 10 quarterbacks on our watch list came out of the state of North Carolina. If that's not saying they throw the ball around in North Carolina, I don't know what does. But the young man on top, DJ Lagway from Willis High School in Willis, Texas. And then at the top of our HBCU poll is Aeneas Dennis of Benedict, followed by David Wright of Allen. And ironically, those 2 schools are side by side up there in Columbia. And then in 3rd place is Jeremy Musa from Florida A&M. So we're going to see how that all fares out this month, so that we can bring you the announcement of the winners of the 2023 BIP Memorial Trophy. Well, that's going to about do it for me tonight, ladies and gentlemen. I do want to thank all of you for tuning in to our show. Again, we want to thank Mr. Bernard Hall for being our guest here, the great quarterback from Bethune-Cookman University. As always, join us every Monday night at 7 o'clock here on YouTube for the Post Route. I want to thank my producer and director, Ms. Ronlee Kennedy, for all her expertise and effort in making these shows possible. We want to thank you, our viewers, for tuning in, and pass the word along to someone else that on Monday nights at 7 o'clock, you can catch this phenomenal show. Until next week, I'm W. Earl Kitchings for the Post Route saying, go for the bomb. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.